From their angelic progenitors, these mighty men had acquired that quality of adamant fixation of purpose, common to the angelic race, in addition to the talents and stature that gave them the fame they still enjoy today. It is also important to note the vast difference between the human and divine assessments of the situation on the antediluvian earth. While mankind is impressed, even fascinated with the likes of the Nephilim, individuals of exceptional prowess, whether physical or otherwise, God is concerned with the heart, with the individual's attitude toward himself and his truth. These pre-flood supermen may be the stuff of human legend and may continue to capture the imagination of mankind today, but to God, their complete lack of respect for him and a total absence of any desire for a relationship with him were causes of profound regret. Indeed, despite the fact that these semi-humans were in many ways gifted beyond anything today imaginable, and would be objects of extreme veneration and emulation by the present-day inhabitants of Earth, God's response to their inveterate evil is completely the opposite. They must be wiped from the face of the earth. God's profound regret and grief expressed here are not in any way to be understood to mean that he was surprised by these events, for history is entirely dependent upon him and his decrees. These events are related to us in language that we can understand. Even though we cannot hope to fathom the true depths of God and his love, we can see from these expressions his merciful purpose for mankind, even for these rebellious, partially angelic humans, and his profound lack of pleasure in their failure to accept that mercy, for he does not desire any of his children to perish. 1 Timothy 2:4. The Lord is not delaying in the fulfillment of his promise, as some think. Rather, he is exercising patience for your sake, being unwilling for anyone to perish, but desiring all instead to come to repentance. 2 Peter 3:9. Patience in the phrase given is from the same Greek root as the verb Peter had used in his first epistle to indicate the patience of God during the 120-year grace period that preceded the Great Flood. 1 Peter 3:20, macrothumia versus macrothumio. Even in the face of such intense, intractable evil, God went the extra mile to provide an opportunity for repentance before visiting the ultimate judgment upon the world of that time. Truly ours is a God to be feared, both for the ineffability of his unexpected mercy upon the undeserving, Psalm 130:4, and for the ineluctable and devastating power of his judgments upon those who systematically refuse it in their wickedness. Or do you esteem as being of little account this truly valuable tolerance he is exercising towards you in all forbearance and patience? If you do, it is because you fail to realize that it is this very tolerance of God that is leading you to, that is giving you the opportunity for, repentance. Romans 2:4. And consider the Lord's patience towards you as leading to your salvation, just as also our beloved brother Paul has written to you, according to the wisdom given to him. 2 Peter 3:15. God's great patience, God's great provision, God's great love and desire for the human race of that time to turn to him was, in the event, despised, forcing the issue of his terrifying judgment. Only after it has been demonstrated for all to see that, in spite of extraordinary patience and provision, the human race had become irredeemably corrupt, did the deluge begin. That judgment, of course, was a total one, exterminating not only all of polluted mankind, but all lesser creatures as well, leaving not even a hint of pollution by association to survive. But God does not blot out the righteous with the wicked. One man had turned to God, and so by his righteousness, the righteousness imputed by God to those who turn to him, Genesis 15:6, stood in the gap for our entire race. Genesis 6:8-10, Noah. But Noah had found favor in the Lord's eyes. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, and perfect in his generations, that is, of pure human seed. Noah, moreover, made a habit of walking with God. Moreover, Noah was the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. In stark contrast to his contemporaries who wanted nothing whatsoever to do with God, Noah aggressively pursued a relationship with him, seeking him, finding him, following him, and finally, coming to serve him in the unique way for which he is now so famous. This attitude of responding to God in all that he initiated gained for Noah God's favor, a treasure more valuable than anything else on earth, and still to be sought in the very same way. Noah was not of mixed seed. His purely human pedigree is the point behind the Hebrew phrase, Tamim Haya Bed Horothaiv, perfect in his generations. This fact, it is true, redounds to the glory of his parents and forefathers, who did not succumb to the temptation of intermarrying with the semi-angelic seed. But Noah had also in his own right forsaken this disastrous course at a time when, due to the intensification of evil mentioned in context and the spread of the angelic strain to nearly all of the human race, such intermarriage must have been more difficult to avoid than ever before. God honored Noah's steadfastness, providing a wife for him of equally pure human stock, and blessing them with 3 boys born during the final 120 years before the flood, for whom God would provide acceptable spouses as well. We can only guess the degree to which Noah was ridiculed, ostracized and threatened for such stubborn aloofness. But for anyone who truly sought and followed God, the alternative course of action would have been unthinkable. So clearly and obviously would it have violated the natural law of God. By resisting the temptations of his day, and by persistently following after God wherever he led, Noah became prepared for the ministry God had in turn prepared for him, that is, to stand in the gap for the entire human race. Now it was through the ark that God chose to effect the physical deliverance of that remnant of the human race from which we all derive, that is, Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 wives. But it was Noah, after all, who built the ark, and that fact is far more important in God's eyes than any wooden structure ever could be. God, of course, could have plucked this family from the rising waters through any number of miraculous means. Instead, he chose to make use of Noah's faith and faithfulness. Given the mammoth nature of the task, it must have taken Noah the better part of the 120-year grace period that preceded the flood to build this vessel capable of containing not only himself and his family, but a remnant of all the world's animal population as well. And while it is this fabulous structure which has captured the attention of posterity since that time, the really amazing part of the story is that Noah persisted at this seemingly impossible task day after day and decade after decade, sticking faithfully to the charge that God had given him. We can scarcely imagine the opposition and active discouragement he encountered from the world for this faithful dedication to the Lord's command. But, in the end, God vindicated Noah, his preacher of righteousness, 2 Peter 2:5, and his work of witness to God in the most dramatic possible way. It is interesting and important to note that although in our own discussions of such things, it is scarcely possible to say the name Noah without mentioning the ark in the same breath, yet in the frequent references to Noah in the Bible, following the Genesis account of the flood, the ark is generally not even discussed. Isaiah 54:9. Matthew 24:37 and 38, and 2 Peter 2:5. The exceptions are 1 Peter 3:20, where the mention is not substantive, and Hebrews 11:7, where the focus is upon Noah's reverent response to God's command in building it. The reason for this is obvious enough. The ark and the animals, 2 by 2, are the parts of the story that impress human beings. But God was impressed by Noah's heart, by Noah's faithfulness. It was as a result of this previously proven character that Noah was chosen to build that most famous vessel as a means of deliverance not only from the coming flood, but also from the perverse generation that had made the deluge a necessity. 1 Peter 3:20. They were saved through the water, that is, brought safely through it, and so delivered from the threat of that generation. Genesis 6:11 through 13, divine judgment and divine deliverance. Now the earth was ruined before God, because the earth was filled with wrongful violence. For God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was ruined, because all flesh had ruined its way of life upon the earth. Then God said to Noah, The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with wrongful violence on their account. So behold, I am about to ruin them completely along with the earth. The continual evil in the collective thinking of mankind that had attended the permeation of the angelic strain throughout the human gene pool had produced a deadly side effect that made the destruction of the antediluvian civilization an absolute necessity, that is, a culture of wrongful violence, Hebrew Chalmers. Intimidation, it would certainly seem, will have been an additional factor in the rapid disintegration of the pure human stock, making Noah's determination to keep himself and his family pure all the more noteworthy and commendable. Since this endemic violence had essentially compromised the principle of free will, And since the mixed population of that time had universally rejected God, despite the witness of impending judgment given by the construction of Noah's Ark, God determined upon an equally complete destruction of them and their world by means of a flood which the Bible takes pains to show was universal in nature. Genesis 7:17 through 24. Thus ended Satan's first major counterattack, an assault which came within a single family of accomplishing its goal, though with God, the most slender thread is an unbreakable bond. Deprived of its fabulous trappings, this direct angelic interference in human affairs was essentially an attack on human freedom, beginning with overwhelming temptation and ending with overwhelming violence. Following the destruction of the earth and the mixed seed that had resulted from this gambit, all the fallen angels directly involved in human procreation were imprisoned in the abyss, a fearful prospect for these creatures of light, and no like design has been attempted since on any scale, large or small,